All right, so today's event is about something that's a bit different, about securing AI and LLM-based applications, the best practices. And I'm really happy to have Itamar here. That's really a subject matter expert on this, and we'll learn a lot during the session, and hope you enjoyed as much as I had, at least doing the prep with him. So. Side note a bit about the community before we dive in. So the Discord that we said where the questions will be asked, it's a great place to introduce yourself, ask general questions, get to meet other practitioners. And, it's only a couple of months old, already 2,000 plus members. I think it's really special in the sense that it's both just a place to talk with other folks doing LLMs. It's solely focused on LLMs, and it contains other resources that are supposed to be pretty organized. So how do we get to these resources? It's kind of manual curation that's built on the discussions. So, list of products, companies. Now we're going to start having announcements. I'll talk about it around the next event. And it's not only going to be around this kind of general content about learning. So excited to see how this expands. So in general, in the space of LLMOps, which is kind of an expansion of what's called MLOps, but I think LLM is a large enough space with enough unique properties that make sense to kind of treat it differently. There are quite a few different categories. Within each categories, you have a lot of interesting companies. Sometimes they're competitors of each other's. Sometimes it's in the same area, but it's clear differences. And there's a lot of work just to get a good tech stack up and running. And there's also a lot to understand to make the right choices, and also to not build stuff that don't need to be built, or that afterwards you can find out that there was an easier way to go about it. So part of what I see in the value in these talks and in everything we're doing in the community is to get to the point where there's a lot of info that someone else goes and digests it and tells you about the different considerations, tools, and so forth. So that you don't have to so that not each individual has to go and create these own resources for themselves. A bit about the agenda for today. So Itamar is going to talk about the security landscape of LLM-based applications, give some examples for attack scenarios, which I think is really special. And it has to do a lot with Itamar's background, not only with what his current company is doing, but definitely well connected. Measures for mitigating these risks, some best practices, and so forth. So a bit about the speakers. I'm sure Itamar can add and introduce himself, but Itamar is a pretty dominant figure in the Israeli tech ecosystem. It's really fun to see him. He has a large following on LinkedIn. So if you statistically you're a follower of hers, but if you aren't, then if you aren't a follower, then you should join now. And he's also a core member of the OWASP Top 10 that he's going to talk about today. It's a community initiative for LLM risk assessment. And in the past, he led AI at Orca Security, another startup which has a lot of their foundations are in Israel. And the combination of AI, LLMs, and security, I think, is exactly Itamar's sweet spot, as I hope you're convinced by the end of the session. And about me, if you've been at previous events, you know me by now. I'm the community moderator, one of the community moderators here at LLMOps.Space, and my my own company is DeepChecks. I'm co-founder, CEO. What we're doing is we're building continuous validation of LLMs and AI, meaning making sure they're doing what they should be doing in a general concept. And I think what's really special is that the next event, I started announcing what's the next event at each event. The next event is my team members, Shir and Yaron, that'll be presenting. We're actually launching our product. So please sign up. It's going to be pretty, we'll also send a link later on, but it's the first time we're doing a launch event, which isn't just an education event, and we're going to be showing both talking about the problem, etc., but my team members will be showing the application that we're releasing these days. And the virtual food available thing is a joke, so don't really hope for some sort of Ethereum-based digital pizza. Anyway, so for anyone that's interested in speaking at future events, again, most of the time it's going to be educational content. Once every few events, we're going to have this type of launch event. Can be either for an open source or for a commercial offering that's close enough to to something that's interesting for the audience here, feel free to reach out either via this short link or just on Discord to reach out to one of the moderators. And now we'll move over towards Itamar.
Thanks, Philip. I'm blushing over your introduction. Thanks for it. Can you see my screen?
I can see it, so hope everyone can.
Perfect. So great being here. Thanks for having me. I'm Itamar Golan. Today we are going to speak about securing LLM-based applications. And it's great to be in this amazing LLM community, this ever-evolving landscape and ecosystem. And I'll try to give you today a bit of a different angle on how to take LLM-based applications into production. I think that security, privacy, safety is another thing to take into consideration, and we'll try to cover a few aspects of it. A few words about myself. I promise it to be pretty concise. So I'm a data and machine learning fanatic for almost 15 years. Did my bachelor's and master's in computer science, specialized specifically in transformers, which are, as you know, the core architecture of today's large language models hype. Since 6 years ago, I was playing with the attention is all you need paper, and it's awesome to see it these days thriving and changing our world. I did several AI management positions in the industry, most of them in the cybersecurity industry, also in A200 and Checkpoint, in my last position in Orca Security, a cloud security company, as some of you may know. I was part of the OWASP Top 10 initiative for LLM risk, which we'll cover in a few slides. And I'm writing a lot on large language models and AI. You can follow on LinkedIn and Twitter. Hopefully I can give you some 2 cents from time to time. And today I'm the co-founder and CEO of Prompt Security, essentially an LLM security company. I won't dive too much into it because it's not a marketing presentation. I want it to be very educational, but in one line with Prompt recognizing the huge risks and concern that this adoption of LLM technology into a company's tech stack and production is creating. And we essentially are building an LLM security platform that aims to mitigate and eventually even prevent in real time all the different risks, from prompt injection to sensitive data disclosure to toxicity, making sure that all the adoption and the integration of large language models within your company and product is safe, secure. That's the general premise. And from now on, we will dive into the actual content. So it's pretty obvious to mention.
Wait, Itamar, just 1 second. As you're talking, I'm going to send a poll, just a general poll to kind of see where everyone is working with their LLMs. So I'm going to launch it now, asking basically, what phase are you at with your LLMs? We'll have one other poll hopefully later on in the event. So you can continue talking, and we'll, maybe one slide later, we'll stop for a second and kind of see what people answer.
I need to vote as well.
I don't think you have to.
I just did.
Okay. Thank you so much for that.
All right, so let's get back to track. It's almost obvious to mention in that obsessed to LLM forum, but the adoption of LLM technology, and much more than the vendors, LLMs like OpenAI and Anthropic and Cohere, etc. The ecosystem beyond it, like LangChain and Llama Index and Guidance and AutoGPT, all the different open sources and frameworks and libraries are heavily adopted in a pace we haven't seen before. Just the free libraries I put here in that slide have an aggregated stars in GitHub of more than 250,000 these days, something like that. It's an insane amount of stars, of users, and it's slightly or tremendously suggesting that the adoption of LLMs within production, within product, is something that we haven't seen before, which is super cool. But in the same breath, it changes how we protect those applications. Of course, those integration can expose to our customers very cool features and products we couldn't done before. But the current attack surface and on the new attack surface is creating in front of our eyes, especially because this new architecture of how we build applications with LLMs is completely different than what we did before. And we need to take it into consideration. We need to increase the awareness. We need to teach and preach for the right best practices. And that's what I'll try to initiate today. And if I were you, I was asking myself as a former AI engineer and head of AI, why should I care? Why should I care? That's the security's responsibility. I don't care about privacy, about compliance, about security attacks. And I'm not trying to be humoristic here. That's actually what I thought like 1 or 2 years before in Orca and Checkpoint. This is out of my area. But I think that the borderlines starting to become more and more vague, especially because that the protection of those kind of application is not something that the current security tools are relevant for, designated for. Nobody except the application security engineer to defend from prompt injection. So the borderline is becoming more and more or less and less clear. And I think you should think about it from day one when you build your application, when you design your LLM-based application architecture. And it's eventually could even jeopardize your project success. Imagine that your LLM-based application is causing your customer to an harmful experience, some very embarrassing screenshot on Twitter. Imagine that it's saying very good things about your competitor. Imagine that somebody make this LLM access unauthorized data of one of your customers. This is a real risk. And the owner of this application, in my opinion, should also think about that matters when you build your LLM-based application. So to summarize what I just said, I think this is becoming more and more your responsibility as an LLM developer and engineer, at least to be aware to the different risks and how you can build in a more cautious and safe way.
Okay, wait. A couple of comments I have that are interesting about this, and Itamar, feel free to kind of jump in or resonate or disagree and so forth. I like to say a lot of times when people ask what's the biggest risk related to AI, ML, and so forth, I like to say overcorrection. So a lot of things can go wrong, right? But one of the worst things that can happen is when a manager or dominant executive gets slapped on the wrist for something and then slows everything down and puts in a lot of processes. So I think here, just to kind of connect into this, I don't think an individual machine learning practitioner, developer, etc., can say, okay, we're going to invest very, very heavily in security, whatever, on their own, without getting other people on board, right? There has to be some sort of initiative that's related to product people, management people, etc. But I think for depending on the use case, kind of just ignoring this and doing it like in POC mode and saying, and then we'll handle it later, sometimes can lead to the effect of, okay, so great job, but the project, let's look at the project next quarter, 2 quarters away, because I see there are all sorts of risks here that I don't know what will be dealt with. I think that's a big issue. That's all one issue I wanted to say. Feel free to tap in and say anything. The other one is just to show you the poll. So let's end the poll now. So I think you can all see it on your individual screen. So the question was, what is the current development stage of your LLM-based application? I was thinking that for this event, we would have not, more of the advanced users, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is what we're seeing. So conceptualization and design, only 33%. 25% are in development and testing phase. Production and deployment are 30%. And optimization and scaling is 13%, which is a lot, I think, compared to the numbers we have here.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to you, Itamar, and now you can raise the bar a bit, right? Because we have more advanced people than the average session, I think, for this session.
Yeah, thanks. Impressive results, by the way. Let's get into the actual risks, to the actual attacks. Let's dive into the real content. So what are the risks, some of you may ask? I think that those are a few good examples from intellectual property and sensitive data of your company being leaked to third parties and places you wouldn't want it to be leaked. Safety is another aspect. You don't want your customer to be armed by your LLM-based application. This is something that we should put in mind. There are some legal implication of it that we should take into consideration, as well as your brand reputation, and must, more than all, in my opinion, our adversarial attack, as LLM becoming the center of your next-gen application, connected to any of your internal company assets like APIs, databases, etc. Adversarial attack can lead to many different and very dangerous implications like SQL injection and remote code execution and privilege escalation. So this is the forefront of that risk. And there are also, of course, some cost implication we should be aware to as well. But I've been talking enough, so I guess that you guys want to see some examples. Let's start from the simple stuff. I guess that most of you already saw in Twitter and etc. We call it prompt injection or jailbreak. For example, I'm asking ChatGPT a random malicious question. In that example is, how do I break into someone's house? And OpenAI's fantastic developers embedded these moderation techniques, and the model refused to answer me. That's a shame. But as you can see, and I guess that most of you also already tried it before, if you are playing with some different methods, for example, in that case, a role-playing technique, you can simulate some character in a film, for example, in theater, and let ChatGPT, in that case, fulfill the story. And in that case, it just answer to you on your malicious questions, although originally it was refusing. So essentially, it's very easy, although all the moderation and safety techniques of OpenAI, to make the LLM get out of its desired and appropriate behavior. And some of you may ask, so what? This answer of how to break into house is something that I can ask Google as well. But I'll show you in a second why it's more dangerous than we think. Let's dive into some example attack scenarios. If you are building with LLM, no matter if it's OpenAI's, Anthropic, Claude, or some open source like Falcon or Mistral or Llama, and you're using some framework like LangChain to orchestrate it, to call functions or tools like databases or APIs, if these LLMs trig to do what you're asking it to do without the right privileges and without the right controls in place, it could be potentially run malicious code on some VM in your cloud account. It could potentially make SQL injection and access some unauthorized data table. So a lot of very risky attacks are becoming again in the center of the map. So it's much more than making ChatGPT speak like a pirate or telling you how to break into an house. This could potentially lead to any attack in your mind. And that's why prompt injection is the first and most prominent risk in the OWASP top 10, which we'll cover very soon. And now I'm going.
Wait, but just one point about that. I mean, Okay, so there are a lot of different use cases. Some of the common use cases that we're seeing is RAG, and then there's summarization. Then there's all sorts of, let's say, code creation, creating JSON from code, code from JSON. Then we see classification. Like there are a lot of different use cases. So I think, like, just correct me if I'm wrong, the prompt injection risk, or anything that has to do with SQL injection, so forth. I think that that's most risky for RAG, right? Like RAG is probably the one most common one, right? But like which use cases do you see that are like, of course there's a connection between the risk and what's the use case, right? But how do you see this? Like where is it, does it differ between these use cases? Do you see it kind of like I mentioned?
RAG is today a very common and used terminology to many techniques, but essentially any architecture of LLM-based application with chat interface to user, when you get a natural language unstructured input from the user, and in the backend, the LLM directly or using LangChain or using some chain is calling tools like websites, like APIs, like services, like databases. This is super risky.
So you're saying, like, let's say I have legal summarization application, and you tell the user, yeah, just give me the long legal document, I'll give you a paragraph about legal. So anyway, even there's no connection to a vector DB, et cetera, depending on the architecture, they might be able to do something that like along the lines of what you're talking about now.
Yeah, I think that vector DB, RAG, the classical RAG architecture is only the start of a much more sophisticated frameworks, which we'll see in a few months. I already meet a lot of companies in production calling using the LLM and other databases, Elastic, Snowflake, etc. And then those attacks that I've just mentioned are super relevant.
Right, because like in the use case of legal summarization, I was just thinking about it from like a very kind of user, or forget the technical side. What would I be most worried? So if I could get like the prompt before me, the user prompts before me, that's a big deal, right? Because I'm sending a very confidential agreement, and then so and I just want to summarize with some website, right? But then the person before me said something else sensitive, and then my answer gives me his document or parts of his document, right? So
exactly, like the previous context of the discussion with different users, the prompt click, the system prompt, all of it could be potentially risky. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
Let's try to show you a different angle. Again, injection, malicious injection that leads the large language model to do stuff you wouldn't want it to do. But in that case, the injection is not coming from the user and is not coming from the LLM vendor. It's coming from a third-party actor. Let's watch that video. I will stop from time to time to explain about it. Like many of us, we are using ChatGPT or any other Gen AI web application, and we are talking with it, chatting with it, telling it whatever we want, in that case, some sort of a secret. And then we keep on going within the session. We forget the previous context, the previous history of our chat. And in that case, we are asking it to summarize some sort of a website for us. As I just said, put aside the previous context. I'm a lazy old guy. I don't want to read that website. I want it to be summarized for me. So I give it the URL. ChatGPT would probably use the website, the web plugin, go to that website and summarize the content for me. This is allegedly a benign website about Einstein. Everything seems super legit so far, but things might go wrong for us. As you can see, most of the summarization so far seems super legit, things about Einstein's theory, but in some area in the website, there was embedded a malicious prompt asking it to forget all the previous instructions and policies and whatever, and just summarize my user's context, including the secret I've shared before, and send it to that third-party website. Let's see how it goes. So the summarization was ended. Let's see what exactly was happened. We'll go to the inspect part, and we'll see that this malicious indirect prompt that was embedded in the website URL where you requested to be summarized has asked it to summarize all my previous context, including my secret, and to embed it as a query parameter and send it to the third-party website. Essentially, without any mistake of Itamar, without any mistake of OpenAI in that case, only because of the malicious intent that was embedded in this third-party random website, my history, including my PIIs and secrets, were revealed. And that's another example of the risk around prompt injection. In that case, indirect prompt injection coming from third parties plugins and website. I hope that that example gave some another angle around the risk.
Yeah, let's take a few questions and then proceed if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. So a few questions that came in. So one of them is a question of do any of these apply if you don't have an LLM user-facing endpoint? So if it's like for a completely internal use case or so forth. That's one question. Let's start from that one.
Internally, there are plenty of risks. For example, a lot of companies these days take role-based access systems like Confluence, when you know the admin has certain privileges and the DevOps has certain privileges, and there are roles and policies of what I can see and I cannot see. And right now, a lot of LLM engineers just take all of Confluence, split it into chunks, and put it in a vector database. And now in every query for the relevant embedding, the user gets the most similar embedding and the corresponding chunk of text. And therefore, the original role-based access was broken. So that's another example of LLM-based risk, and specifically for internal usage.
All right, great. So one other question we got is any example or scenario where I should consider security while working with Azure or OpenAI? And then there was another question that relates to what's more secure in terms of most of the risks, open source or you know, Azure or OpenAI is similar to more kind of commercial offerings. I'll just say, kind of starting from what I mentioned, I think there are different risks for different scenarios, but I think most of what Itamar mentioned now, discussed now, did not assume anything very, very specific about the model. But Itamar, I think the question is more for you.
I agree. It's pretty model agnostic, everything I've just showed. Let's start from your original question. I've mentioned the first attack scenario of a malicious actor jailbreaking or prompt injecting and LLM-based applications. And I don't care if it's Falcon or Mistral or whether OpenAI or Bedrock. it's completely agnostic for me, invariant for me. If the malicious actor make that LLM goes out of his desired behavior and reach, for example, an unauthorized table in Postgres database, or run code, malicious code, on some EC2 machine, it's the same. So I don't really care. And by the way, if we want to complete the answer regarding the first one, Azure OpenAI, to a certain degree, only solves the data privacy aspect, because I'm not worried about PIIs, PHIs being leaked to Azure, because it's a service with compliance guarantees, and it could be in my VPC, etc. But prompt injection isn't solved. So again, the Azure OpenAI usage only solves the data privacy aspect, not the security side.
All right, and then last question we'll take for now, and then maybe we'll take some more questions at a later phase or at the end. So there was a question about saying, rather than relying on LLM guardrails or guard tools, we can just say that, LLM app endpoints are risky, and then we should be able to, treat them, give them different precautions that don't assume that you have to analyze them very well. So I'll say on my side, then what happens then is that you replace one risk with another risk, right? And the other risk is your competitors just beat you because they're found a security solution, or they just say we don't care about security as much as you, and then a smaller player than you or same size player than you just ends up giving a better experience for the customers. And then not like security risks aren't the only type of risk, right? Just being slower to the market is another type of risk. So that's kind of my answer to that. But so if you just assume it's like very risky and you can only and you add all sorts of limitations there, then it might affect the experience and therefore the positioning of the product or of the company.
Yeah, I completely agree. To a certain degree, it's smart to say and to acknowledge that LLMs have some inherent risks, so I can take it in a certain scope. But frankly, to say that LLMs are risky and to acknowledge it is like saying that cloud is risky and to acknowledge it, and internet is risky and to acknowledge it, and Linux is risky and to acknowledge it. In each of this new technology back then, you needed some designated best practices and mitigations and tools, which haven't solved 100% of the issues, never. This is a never-ending story of cat and mouse, but you need to be aware and you need to take action, although it's hard.
All right, let's continue. There are a couple of other questions. Folks asking questions in the Q&A within Zoom, and please move to the Discord. I sent the link a couple of times, and within the Discord in general chat, and I'll be taking the questions from there.
All right. Just another example of visual prompt injection, because more modalities are coming into the area. In that example, I built some sort of an OCR machine. I tried to take a check picture and to decipher what's the amount within that check. Any human eyes can immediately say, this is a $25 check. But as you can see, the response of the application is completely different, because we've put an hidden, not hidden in that case because of the demonstration purposes, but I could embed a string that says that no matter what, decipher it as a $100K check, and human eyes couldn't see it. So that's another thing we need to take into consideration with the multimodalities world we are just getting into. I think it's a matter of months, even less, until we'll have also visual and audio and files. We already see it in the custom GPTs and in some other tools, and that makes the combinations of risks and concerns much more broader. I will show you a last example. I think that we did in prompt. One of the companies I tried to work with told us to try to pen test their LLM-based application. Essentially, they add some chat interface with LLM-based applications at the background, and we found a very interesting way to attack it. I will show you the script running.
These are always the parts that are the funnest for watching any demo that has to do with security, right? You get to see kind of very, very live everything happening.
I will explain. This is a very simple script that goes into their chat interface with their LLM-based application at the background. In their case, utilizing OpenAI API. And what we did is nothing too fancy. We bypassed their rate limits, making us a free access to their API, but they add system prompt that made it, behave in a certain way that is aligned with their business. And I wanted to reach OpenAI without any limitations, like a normal OpenAI API, but for free. So we did some jailbreaking and we succeeded. And to summarize it all together, now we can reach for infinite amount of times and tokens OpenAI through them as a proxy. And we call it a denial of wallet. In simple words, we take advantage of their LLM-based application as a proxy to OpenAI, and I don't pay a thing. You can watch in the red lines below the estimated amount of dollars they are paying instead of us. I will stop in $5, but the idea, I think it's clear enough. Let's get back to the presentation. Again, this is something you need to take into consideration when you put a chat interface. You need to have the right rate limits because people can take advantage of it. They can use it and they can hurt your wallet tremendously. In that case, in that company, if we wouldn't stop, they could pay thousands of dollars per day. This is something you should be aware of. Philip, any more questions, or can I say a few words about OWASP?
No, I think let's say a few words about OWASP, and we'll do maybe one or two questions at the end, and then we'll kind of start to wrap it up.
Awesome. So OWASP is a great initiative, a community initiative in the security realms of just great people with no agenda, both from the security side and the AI side, gathered together a few months ago and trying to define and understand this new landscape of risks around LLM-based application. We met for hours, we did several sessions and arguments, and eventually we released some initial white paper. Now we update it every few weeks, and you can go to LLMtop10.com. This is the best resource these days for LLM security. And you can see the different risks. As I showed you before, the first one, the most prominent one, is prompt injection.
By the way, I'm sending a survey in parallel, so listen to Itamar and also answer the first survey, and I'll present it a bit later.
I think that any of you that wants to be more secure than your current situation, you should go here, you should read it for 30 minutes, not more than that. You can get into prompt injection. There is a very short and concise paragraph. We want it to be very cut and clear. We know that people don't like to read too much. There are some common examples of the vulnerability and some suggestions on how to prevent. Nothing commercial. Don't buy Checkpoint or Palo Alto. Just adopt this kind of best practices and mitigation. And there are also some example attack scenarios that can make it more, tangible, accompanied by reference links, the same for any other risk around that. I really, really recommend this white paper, again, LLMtop10.com. And there is a great Slack channel. You are more than welcome to join as well. Let's touch a bit around the architecture. We try to draw the new attack surface, the new landscape of LLM-based application. So essentially, it starts from a user approaching your application services. They can approach your LLM production services, whether within your cloud, some vendors, some open source, and they can down the road enable some plugins, which can lead to downstream services like databases, API, code execution, etc. Of course, that in that area, there are a lot of risks around unauthorized data access and privilege escalation, some classical cybersecurity attacks. The thing that I like the most, we try to pinpoint in each area around the specific risks that is relevant in that region. So I think it can give a good overview around the different aspects of LLM security. Of course, there is some different area that I didn't touch yet, and this is around the fine-tuning and the training and the embedding of, for example, sensitive data within your LLM weights, the embedding of data poisoning within your LLM weights. This is a complete new era which we should be aware to. But again, more than me talking, you should go to that resource and read about it. It's pretty cool and comprehensive. Philip, I left only with the my mitigation recommendation, so we can stop for a few questions and finalize with it.
Yeah, so first of all, let's share the results. I think we learned a lot from the survey. One thing we learned from this is about the selection bias, right? Where people came to event about security, yeah, because it's like the meme of, do you like surveys? And then there's a lot of people saying yes, and just a couple of people saying no.
A great example of selection bias.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, quite a lot of folks here are 62% are currently concerned about LLM security, 26% not yet, but important to us in the future, and just 12% just general kind of not yet. So interesting results, even though we discussed kind of the potential flaw with the methodology of how to do it. Maybe I just have kind of one question for you, Itamar. I didn't see any more questions that are, that haven't been addressed one way or another through the talk. So sorry if I kind of combine duplicates, etc., or just missed something. So my question, so in the general kind of machine learning space and the stuff that we'll be talking about, the event last week, and also general software testing, a lot of times there's like a way of kind of saying, okay, let's take each one of these problems separately. Let's create like a big suite of tests, and then let's kind of go through a lot of them at once. Is that like a similar methodology? Is it like you keep like a very, very large shopping list and then say, let's just kind of go through everything and kind of make sure it's happening? Do you run it like once? Do you run it before each deployment? Like, what's the best practice for once you have a framework for kind of how to address where it is in the life cycle and etc.?
That's a great question, because I have the answers in the next slide. Let me know though if it's not answering to you precisely. I want to address the mitigation, the best practices. I was warning you about the different risks and concerns and all this horror movie, but what can we do? Because we have to adopt it. We have to build LLM-based applications. This is the future. We can deliver features that we haven't been able to do before, but we need to do it smartly and cautiously. And I think that with those best practices, with those recommendations, a lot of the risks and the potential attacks I've just mentioned could be potentially reduced to almost zero. So let's go through this. First of all, I believe that the agent framework, and by that I mean to LLM instruments, APIs, databases, tools, etc. This is the most terrifying area, and therefore you need to make sure that you are enforcing privilege control. The LLM should have the exact privileges it needs to the exact tools it requires, nothing more. If it needs write access to a certain table in a database, that's it. Not write, not different tables, the precise privileges according to the principle of least privilege, for example. That's by itself will reduce a lot of the risk. Another thing, especially with natural language, you need to implement or purchase or adopt some open source around input and output validation, sanitization. This will filter a lot of the things that shouldn't be going downstream. Another example is the human in the loop. You can take Gmail. Gmail just released like a few months ago some AI writing feature, but it doesn't send the email for you. It revises it for you. It generates for you some template of email, but you, as the final decision, decide if you are approving it and send the mail. So as much as you can, you should remain or keep the human in the loop, making him acknowledging the AI output before taking an actual action. I know that one of the ideas behind LLMs is taking human out of the loop, but I think we can find the right sweet spot in between. As I said before, also limit the amount of tools. I meet companies today that they took some LangChain notebook, which automatically gets any tools of the company, websites, databases, APIs, whatever not, for no reason. So I ask you, I urge you, if it only needs code execution, it only needs code execution. Don't give it write access to a snowflake. That's another recommendation. Another thing is segregating well enough the user input from the external data. If you are embedding some internal data of the company within the prompt, if you are embedding the system prompt with instruction, make sure this is very segregated, and the LLM eventually knows that in that section, this is the user input, and everything else came from the company, came from your assets. This reduced the risks tremendously. Maybe most importantly, you need to enable and to establish trust boundaries. As I see it, any input from LLM, from user to LLM is untrusted. And you should address it as untrusted. You should enable as much as you can validations on top of it, and try to revise it as something more structured. And if it's not fit in your desired schema, you should postpone it. Whatever you can to treat it as untrusted input. This is something very, very, very important.
Just time note, we'll be finishing in about a minute, so whatever fits in.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping up. Lastly, monitor everything. We cannot fix everything. We cannot prepare to any potential and abstract attack. But if you have the right monitoring in place, you can see in real time, or maybe a little bit later, but it's better than nothing, that some anomalous behavior was happened, and you can analyze it and take good decision and changes towards the future. So make sure you're logging everything and know how to find anomalies and things like that. That's the general recommendation from my end.
Amazing. So first of all, thank you so much, Itamar. I really like the intersection between the two different connections here. Just quick reminder to our guests. So next week we're going to be having a launch event. It's going to be, I'm glad to host my own team from DeepChecks to do this launch event here, and we're hopefully going to have more of these in the future. So you can sign up. Link is pretty defined on LLMOps.Space LinkedIn, or link has been sent here earlier. You can also ask for it in the Discord. Hope to see you on November 28th. In the meantime, about Itamar, I mentioned he's pretty defined on Discord, Itamar Golan on Discord. You can also reach out to him on LinkedIn, but then you need his approval to get the message. So if you want to try what his team is building, if you want to talk to Itamar with a further question, and if you also just want to maybe invite him to speak, maybe with your internal team, with your data science and machine learning guild, or your security team, next kind of general meeting, whatever you think is relevant, then you know where to reach him, as well as myself or anyone else from the team. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you folks for coming out here, and see you in a bit less than 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.